Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review is brought to you in part by Rogers Hobby Center in Saginaw, Michigan, where the fun begins. This review covers the Knight Rider TV series Knight Industries 2000 car. It's a 125 scale kit from MPC number 806. Now, using the acronym KITT, K-I-T-T, the show's producers fitted a 1982 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am with highly advanced capabilities that predicted many of the advances that exist today. But for 1982, it was only a fantasy. Now, KITT was powered by a turbojet engine with afterburners and a computer-controlled 8-speed turbo drive transmission that produced speeds in excess of 200 miles an hour, both forward and backwards. The MPC kit was introduced in '82 with several new boxings through '83 and even a new one in 2004. Now, this new boxing was issued in 2014. The kit comes with 114 pieces molded in black, clear, tinted clear, clear red, soft rubber tires, and chrome plated parts, and the directions come nicely packaged along with water slide decals. When you're done, the kit measures about 8 inches long, 2 inches tall, and 3 inches wide. Oh, that sounds like Newt. He's tapping on the glass and waving his arms. I guess he's got a question. Newt's our program director. Come on in here, Newt. What do you got?
So this would be considered a concept car?
Well, most concept cars are basically, the physical design, but some also incorporate new technology. Now, this was basically an '82 Trans Am, except for the custom front end and hood, but I guess it would kind of qualify as a concept car with all the new electronics and artificial intelligence built into the vehicle.
Seems like I've seen a lot of those features in other cars already.
Yes, sir. A talking car that can sense its surroundings and has a silent mode. Oh my goodness. The only thing we need to do now is hook up our Fitbits to the Alexa app, and I think we've got the whole package. Here are the contents of the kit. As you can see, they're pretty nicely arranged. All the parts are separated, the chrome tree and the glass windows there, both tinted and clear. And also note that we're going to be using liquid cement for most of the construction, occasionally super glue for fragile parts, and clear glue for the windows. Now, make sure that you heed the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when using any of the products that you see or hear in the review. Here are the colorful decals for the kit. As you can see, the register is pretty good, and the California Knight plates are available. Most of these go on the inside and the interior, but some of them go on the outside, and you may need to use some of these setting solutions for those. Construction starts with the engine. Unfortunately, the kit only offers a standard V8, and it appears the kit's transmission is actually a manual 4-speed. And of course, the automatic and the V8 were used to film the series, so it's close to a movie car, only not the idea of the kit car. Now, gather up the engine halves, oil pan, filter heads, intakes, and valve covers there, and you have to decide whether you want the fuel injected or the turbo option. Now, I use the turbo and remove any of the flash and marks from the sprue gates and attachments, and then glue the engine halves together. Clean up the glue seams on the transmission, glue on the oil pan, the intake, and the heads, and paint the engine Chevy orange with the silver transmission. And the callouts are, on the instructions, so they'll help you along. And then I'll glue the white oil filter and the chrome valve covers on later after the engine is dry. Get these parts out and clean up the timing chain cover, the water pump, the fuel pump, and the starter, and then glue the parts to the engine and paint them according to the callouts, most of course flat black or steel. So get these parts off of the sprues and remove the air cleaner and the carb, and that's on the chrome sprue, and then the distributor, exhaust manifolds from the black sprue. Now remove any of the imperfections, clean them up, and glue those to the engine and paint them. The engine is coming together pretty nicely now. So clean up the belt and the pulleys, the alternator, the power steering pump, the AC, and the smog pump and the fan. And then after you've glued those on, or if you need to, paint them ahead of time and let them dry. And then put them in position onto the engine. Gather up the parts that you see here, along with the lower body section there, and clean those up, and glue the springs to the lower body, and place the spindles into the lower body without glue. Now glue the A-arm to the lower body and the spring without getting glue on the spindle, keeping it clear for opposable wheels. So place the tie rod on the spindles. Don't use any glue if you want them to turn. And then I heated up the end of a small screwdriver to melt the tip of the spindle and to join the tie rod to keep them together. But after test fitting the sway bar, I found that it interfered with the tie rod. So I gently reformed the sway bar to clear the tie rod, allowing the parts to be steerable. Gather up the pieces you see here on the back end, including the exhaust, and clean those up. And if you're planning on using side pipes, don't place the exhaust there at on the bottom side of the lower body. Now glue the axle halves together and make sure the seam is cleaned up, and the same with the spring halves. Then glue the suspension parts to the lower body after test fitting, and paint the parts according to the callouts. There are two sets of rims on the chrome tree, and I chose the KITT car rims as on the box art in the TV show. So clean up the rim halves and the bearings, and place the bearing in the back half of the rim without glue, removing the plating from the joint area of the front half of the rim, and then glue it to the back half without getting it on the bearing surface. Now after the rims dry, paint the center of the rim gloss black, and then scuff the tire with some sandpaper where the tread area is. After the paint dries, push the tires over the rims to mount them. Now we can locate the engine. So grab the drive shaft and the cross member and clean up the seam lines and any imperfections. And then we're going to glue the engine and drive shaft into the lower body, and then glue the cross member into place pretty much all at one time so that they are aligned and go together properly. Now we'll add the exhaust pipes and the wheel assemblies, but I deviated with the exhaust there. But glue the wheel assemblies to the spindles and the rear axle. Only get glue on the bearing, and then allow the axles to rotate as the glue dries to make sure that they're still free. Now with the turbo engines, the directions chose the side pipes, but I wanted to use the fuel injected type exhaust. So I glued the Y pipe, that's part 27, to the lower body, and then the left pipe, and then test fit that and trim and bend it with a little heat if needed to fit it between the turbo and the Y pipe, and do the same for the right side. Now that's a deviation. If you want it to go easy, follow the directions of either the injected engine exhaust or the turbo side pipe exhaust for a little easier assembly. We can begin some work on the interior, starting with the dash and the IP. Now gather that up along with the steering wheel components and glue the dash halves together. Clean up the joins there, and then paint those, and place the decals on the dash, steering wheel, and the center console. Now I used the Walters brand Solvaset to get the decals to conform to the features, and then I clear coated them with some Pledge floor gloss. Now to detail other highlighted buttons, I just used a Molotow chrome pen and painted some clear colors like red, blue, green, amber over the chrome to imitate some buttons and lights. Now locate the seat parts along with the dash components and the interior tub, and remove the seats from the sprue and smooth out any imperfections. Now glue the seat halves together, let them dry, and then repair the glue seam with some sanding sticks and putty if necessary, and glue the seats into the interior. And I'm going to glue the dash and the center console in after I've painted the interior. Now for some hobby tips. I use an Iwata HP-C for my airbrushing on this kit, and preferably I use Tamiya or Mr. Hobby and for paint, and for primer, a Stenolrez brand. So paint bottles can be hard to open if you shake them to mix them, or brush paint from the bottle, because it gets on the seal and the threads. So I use a paint mixer like this Badger unit. It's small, they're inexpensive, and I also use bottle opener by Mr. Hobby to alleviate the issues there, and try to never turn the bottles upside down or shake them. Also, don't pour from the bottles. I use a pipette, or sometimes you can use a syringe without the needle, and just make sure, of course, they're cleaned if they're not brand new. So I began with the painting by spraying the interior with some black Stenolrez primer to show shadows under the buff interior colors, and kind of ghost highlight the crevices, and then paint the interior a buff color over the top of the black primer. Now glue the dash into place and the center console, and then I hand picked out the armrests with some semi-gloss black, and I used the chrome pen to pick out the metal door handle and highlights on the doors. Now get these pieces out for the engine bay area and remove the radiator fan shroud, the battery radiator hoses, the washer fluid reservoir, and the antifreeze overflow, and the top air dam from the sprues, and clean up any imperfections. Then paint the parts, and I used some poster tack to hold the reservoirs on toothpicks while painting. That way you can get a nice clean paint of them while mounting them on something stationary. Now glue the fan shroud to the radiator, and glue the battery to the radiator support bracket, and then glue the radiator support bracket to the lower body and attach the upper radiator hose in place. Now I'll put the upper air dam in after the body is in position to make sure it's aligned properly. As before, you'll find too that you can't always follow the sequence of instructions because of the way the parts are painted and go together. So I'm going to do that deviation again, and I'm going to glue on the front and rear bumpers and the rear spoiler. So now I can paint the car, including the hood and the lower air dam, with the black primer, let it dry, and then paint it with a gloss black. I painted the firewall a semi-gloss black, and the power brake unit was painted kind of a gold zinc mix, and the master cylinder was aluminum, and the tank was white, and the lid was black. Now I also detailed the center overhead console with some of the chrome pen, and then I touched those with a little bit of clear paint colors in order to allow the highlighting from the chrome pen to come through and look like lights and things that are seen on that section. And now we can mate these pieces together, the windows and body and chassis. And after the paint was all dried, test fit the body and the chassis together, and glue the windshield and the rear glass in with some clear or white glue, and then glue the headliner console to the body and the rear view mirror to the front glass. Glue the firewall to the body next, and then place the interior into the body, kind of wiggle it in, and then place the body onto the chassis, looking for your glue points and making sure that you scrape any paint away, or even chrome if it's there, for the contact points where you're going to glue. Now, using some white or clear glue, put the rear tail lights in position that are clear red into the rear of the car, and while the parts are still movable, place the upper air dam in between the radiator and the front of the body, and glue the lower air dam into place. Now place the front sensor decal into position and the rear license plate decal, and then I coated those with a little of the Solvaset to get them to conform to the body. At this point, we're wrapping things up. I chose the tinted T-tops for my build, and I glued them to the body with a little clear glue or white glue. Now place the hood over the engine with no glue so that it can be removed later to view the engine. Now coat everything with a gloss coat of Pledge Floor Gloss. Here are the optional pieces that I had left over. You may mix and match like I did and come up with a different combination, but by and large, there's not a lot of excess in this kit. Well, there you have it. This stunning looking kit brings back a lot of memories. It's a lot of fun to build, and I did it when I was young, back when it first came out, and as you can see, the difference is pretty stark here. You know, when you get a little older, it's kind of nice to appreciate having done those and then comparing them to your new techniques and knowledge. So you can put this kit together in a weekend. It's a pretty nice kit, other than the front end not fitting quite right because of the movable steering. It went together very well. There weren't really any big issues. Now, if you're a fan of the old TV show, sometimes these kits are being reintroduced now, and they're fun to build because now you're better at it. So, if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. Well, we hope you like this premium step-by-step model kit review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the icon in the lower right of any of our reviews. Or you can find us on Facebook or our website right on replicas.com. Thanks.